Good morning, I'm Mariam Zaidi and welcome to a Euractiv hybrid conference supported by EIT, the Global Digital Foundation and Huawei. Now today is a little bit different. We're having a launch event for a Q&A guide on supporting cybersecurity for SMEs in Europe. A big welcome to our in-person audience. Thank you for taking your seats. And also welcome to everyone who is joining us online. And as always, do get involved and ask your questions on our Slido app, and we will come to those questions a little bit later on in the program. Okay, so supply chain attacks, AI-based spear phishing, these are just a few of the ways that hackers can target you online. And cyber attacks are only getting even more sophisticated as technology is evolving. Now, according to the World Economic Forum, there was an increase of 667% of phishing attacks during the initial few months of the COVID-19 pandemic, so back in 2020. Now, Europe's cyber agency, ENISA, said 57% of SMEs who close business operations do so as a direct result of a cyber attack. So how can these SMEs then be helped? Well, peer-to-peer help is being provided by EIT Digital, the Global Digital Foundation, and Huawei. And today they're launching this Q&A guide promoting cybersecurity for SMEs in Europe. Now, they say that this guide will help improve awareness levels of staff working in SMEs, which is always hugely important, getting them to learn about cybersecurity and how to really mitigate any cyber attacks. Well, to find out more, let's now kick off the event. And I invite everyone to watch your screens for an introductory video which is about cyber attacks and how they disrupt global supply chains. And given, of course, that SMEs account for a massive proportion of the EU's GDP, they've got a massive target on their backs. Take a look.
Small and medium-sized enterprises are drivers of innovation and economic growth. There are 25 million SMEs in Europe, employing 100 million people in Europe. Half of the EU GDP comes from SMEs. It is not right to assume that cyber attacks target large companies only. There is clear evidence that the SME sector is being systematically targeted by cyber criminals. In the first few months of COVID-19, when online activity increased rapidly, according to the World Economic Forum, there was an increase of 667% in phishing attacks. According to ENISA, 57% of SMEs close business operations as a direct result of a cyber attack. Cyber attacks disrupt global supply chains. So what should SMEs do to improve cybersecurity? First, improve awareness levels for staff working in SMEs about cybersecurity and how to mitigate against cyber attacks. Second, improve awareness in identifying malware, a phishing attack, a web-based attack, a DDoS attack, or ransomware. Third, improve access control, secure password management. A lot of information is out there to help SMEs put in measures to stop cyber attacks. In seeking more information on how to stop cyber attacks, or in the case of cyber attack, contact your local CCERT for advice. CCERTs are located in each of the 27 member states of the EU. Other bodies also provide excellent materials on how to improve cybersecurity levels for SMEs, including ENISA, Europol, OECD, and the World Economic Forum. If you are an owner of SME, please don't hesitate to refer to them and get professional support.
So a lot of information there for SMEs. Well, let's dive in further. And now for some introductory remarks, let me invite to the stage TJ Aliviavelli, Bulgarian MEP for Renew Europe. Please do take the floor. Round of applause, everyone.
Good morning, dear guests, dear participants, dear ladies and gentlemen. It is a real honor for me to open this important conference entitled Q&A Guide on Promoting Cybersecurity for SMEs. In the very beginning, I'd like to thank Euroactive, EIT Digital, Global Digital Foundation, and Huawei for organizing this timely event. We are now facing challenging time, where on the one hand, EU is taking measures to overcome the consequences of the determined Russian invasion in Ukraine, and on the other hand, the Europe is trying to adapt itself for the targets of the green and digital transition. The COVID-19 pandemic showed how important the internet and computers in general are for SMEs to maintain their business. Just remember how they turned challenges posed by the pandemic into opportunities and show their ability to adapt, find solutions, and take risks. In order to survive the pandemic and to continue their businesses, many SMEs had to take continuity measures, enabling staff to work remotely. Here, I like especially to recognize the efforts of the companies in rural areas, which were even more challenged from the sudden started pandemic. It is true that the digital transformation increases SMEs' exposure to digital security risk and likelihood to be victims of cybercrime by making them more exposed to digital security incidents and making them more reliant on digital technology. As stated in the last European Economic Forum annual report, cybersecurity is one of the top 10 risks for businesses globally. Criminals often target SMEs for various reasons, such as they offer a good value to risk ratio, and as many SMEs provide services to larger organizations, they can enable criminals attack those larger organizations through their supply chain. In fact, ENISA has found that cyber attacks against the EU supply chain have accounted for 70% for all cyber attacks, compared to 1% only last year. Recently, the European Commission adopted its working program for 2023 that aims to ensure a strong, resilient Europe in the background of overlapping crises. On the 30th anniversary of the single market, the revision of the late payment rules will help reduce burdens for SMEs in a time of economic uncertainty. Moreover, the initiative on further expanding and upgrading the use of digital tools and processes in company law will enhance transparency around company in the single market, simplify administrative and judicial procedures, and facilitate the cross-border expansions of companies. The European Parliament supports a range of initiatives to promote SMEs as they play a key role for the economy of the Union. SMEs might be small in size, but they are big in impact. They are a vital source of creativity and have a real entrepreneurial desire for innovation. As a member of EMPO Committee and as a member of Renew Europe Task Force for SMEs, I acknowledge the importance of the access to funding for the small and medium-sized enterprises. This is why I'm glad to remind that EU programs such as Digital Europe, InvestEU, Horizon Europe, and the resilience and recovery plans from the 27 different member states all contain strong funding mechanisms to support SMEs across Europe. Looking forward, SMEs need to be more aware of and effectively manage digital risk to take the most of opportunities provided by the digital transformation. SMEs in all sectors need to get prepared to better manage digital security risks and defend their data. In this regard, I congratulate the organizer of this conference for publishing this important guide that will be in real benefit for SMEs. I believe that raising awareness is the first vital step of the process. Information campaign, effective cooperation mechanisms, including good channels of communication, are essential in identifying and responding to emerging threats. Building stronger SME structure in Europe will implement both the green and digital agendas that are being pursued by the EU institutions. The European Parliament is working closely with the European Commission and with EU governments to put in place even more initiatives to develop our SME economy. The EU needs our SMEs to prosper as we seek to collectively rebuild the economy of Europe. At a time of serious economic challenges, we must do more to protect, promote, and grow opportunities for small and medium-sized enterprises, because no company born big. I wish you successful discussions today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, well now to officially launch the Q&A guide, please give a warm welcome to Tony Jin Young, who's the Huawei Chief Representative to the EU. Welcome, please take the stage, and Head of Public Affairs, Western Europe.
Thank you, Mariam. Dear MEP Availability, dear guests, good morning. It's so great to be here today. Huawei is delighted to announce the publication of this question and answer guide on improving the level of the cybersecurity for small and medium-sized enterprises in Europe, and together with two organizations that are driving the digital and innovation development across Europe. We're honored to cooperate with EIT Digital and with the Global Digital Foundation on this very important initiative. You know that from the video, SMEs are the backbone of the European economy. They are the driver of growth and innovation in Europe. They are our future for the economy and the society. 25 million SMEs represent 99% of all the companies, 100 million employees, and more than half of our GDPs. So SME also the key element of the European supply chain, and we know that they're also the target of the cyber attack. ENISA figures already showing that a big amount of the growth happened the last years and in the futures because of the capability they found of the vulnerabilities. So Huawei is committed to work with partners in Europe and elsewhere to create a safe and transparent cyber environment. Our approach is that cybersecurity is built into every single aspect of a company, from strategy and the processes to human resources and the delivery. This is especially true in the ICT sector, our sector. A single piece of the equipment, typically including the components sourced from all over the world. To deal with the cybersecurity challenges effectively, we need to build a global standards and follow international agreed processes. Therefore, we strongly support this guide, small guide, the first step, but offers best practices and resources from ENISA, Europol, ETSI, and OECD, and the WEF. It also outlines the strong support that EIT Digital can provide to SMEs in cybersecurity via Deep Hack, Innovation Factory, and venture programs. We hope it will serve as practical tools for all the MSCs to improve the cybersecurity levels, including cyber attack identifications, response, and mitigations. It also helps raise awareness among their staffs, the people, the key person. In fact, 82% of the data breach involves a human element, but it could be avoided by learning how to identify the nature of cyber attack, learning how to put in place measures to mitigate against the cyber attacks, learning how to improve the password management, source data backup, manage vulnerabilities, and put in place incident and communication plans. So we support the EU's plans to further strengthen the cybersecurity laws, including the Cybersecurity Act, the NIS2 Directive, the Cyber Resilience Act. So cybersecurity is a challenge to all the businesses, requiring solid collaborations from multiple stakeholders and strong capacity building for all. To this end, in the framework of 2023 European Year of Skills, we welcome the work of the new European Cybersecurity Competence Center in developing their annual work on the Horizon Europe and the Digital Europe initiative. And the program supports stronger level of the cybersecurity for SMEs. We strongly support the efforts of the European Commission to establish a cybersecurity skill academy at Huawei. We believe that building skills and capacity will unlock all the potential of digital. That is why in 2023, we will launch this guide in several EU member states in their own languages. I'm certain that this guide will play a small but solid, important role to improve the cybersecurity for European businesses, especially for our SMEs. We look forward to your feedback, and together with our partners, we will make this guide available for all the European SMEs and interested organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Tony, if you don't mind, I do have a few follow-up questions for you, Tony. So if you'd like to maybe go back that way. You can take a sip of water. First question really is, why this guide and why now? What was it you were trying to achieve with it?
Because Huawei is a global digital companies, our mission and vision is to bring the digital to every home, organizations, and the companies. And we know the importance of cybersecurity since the early beginning of the companies. And so many figures proved that we're facing very tough challenges. And as a company deep-rooted in Europe more than 2 decades, we are the most transparent company in cybersecurity, and we have the competence, we have the knowledges. We know that our big organization also have such kind of level of the competence, so we want to focus on the SMEs. And right now, I think it's never too late. Before we have bilateral communication with the associations, but right now we want to, together with EIT Digital and the Global Digital Foundations, to really promote the cybersecurity awareness and the skills for the SMEs.
Lovely. And then just one last other question then. I mean, this Q&A guide, you're basically giving help to the smallest SME to the bigger SME, aren't you? I mean, does your advice transcend to every single type of SME then? And how's it helping? Like, say, for example, a small bakery, someone that doesn't really understand what cybersecurity is. How would this guide help someone like them?
I think this Q&A guide, first step. That's why we call for more partners to really understand the importance and join these important initiatives. And awareness is important. And awareness, after awareness is they know where and how they get the capacity, get help. This guide is one part, but among that, we are going to have the opportunity to work not only Huawei, but other digital companies and also the organizations to introduce more practical measurements, tools. Of course, the lawmakers are important. You need to regulate well and maybe put more fundings. And but this is I think the first step. And firstly, is important is awareness and know where we go.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, please do take your seat and do drink your water. Thank you so much. Okay, well, without further ado, it's time now to introduce our panelists and get their take on this guide. Okay, so first we have Matteo Bellotti, who's the education lead at EIT Global. Welcome. We have Eva Tasheva, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, co-founder and cybersecurity lead at Cyan, member of the ENISA Enterprise Security Working Group. We also have John Higgins, CBE Chair at Global Digital Foundation, and we have Milda Kalos Kaite, Senior Policy Manager, European Cybersecurity Organization responsible for SME policy, market development and investments, the industry representative here. Okay, so I'll start with you, Matteo, first. If you'd like to introduce yourself, tell everyone why you're here, maybe a few initial thoughts. Over to you.
Thank you. So indeed, I'm Matteo Bellotti from EIT Digital, one of the community of the EIT, the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. And I'm here in my role here as education lead, where I'm coordinating several of the education programs that we're running at EIT Digital. So why we are here as EIT Digital and why also we wanted to contribute to this guide. First of all, we are contributing to the, let's say, the domain of cybersecurity in two ways. One is more related to innovation, and one is more related to education. In one case, we are trying to support, in the innovation side, we are trying to support startups, scale-ups, and in general also SMEs to build a venture or boost a venture, depending on the program they want to apply to, and I can explain later which are these programs. On the education side, what we are trying to do is to bridge the skill gap. So really try to breed talents from the very early, let's say, young age, so with a master program to more professional courses and other short-term courses for professionals to, let's say, boost and increase their skill and competencies in cybersecurity. And again, these are the programs that we can discuss later more in detail.
Exactly. Eva?
Hi, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here with you. I'm Eva Tasheva. I'm cybersecurity consultant. Cyan is my own micro consultancy on cybersecurity services, and I'm here today in my role of contributor to the guide. So I was very happy and honored to be invited by the partners to put my knowledge, my experience of improving cybersecurity of SMEs in the text so that this knowledge could be spread and given. And what I'd like to invite you to think of this event and of the guide today is that it is probably the first Christmas present for Europe and for SMEs, but it's a very important one. Take it your own present and spread it, because the text itself, we try to make it as approachable, as useful as possible, but it would mean nothing if it's not taken by the partners, by EIT Digital, by the Global Digital Foundation, by you, and give it to an SME in your network. Give it to the people you care about, because it would help them, and Huawei is really going to make the biggest impact by sending it in their network on the ground.
And a Christmas present from Mrs. Claus herself.
The spirit of Christmas, I really believe this is the best present I could deliver
Thank
today.
you. Well, it's the best way to deliver a message, you know. Go in character. John, over to you.
Yeah. When Paul McDonald and I formed Global Digital Foundation about 6 years ago now, nearly 6 years ago, it was founded on the belief that digital technologies could be a really powerful, and I'd worked all my career on topics that made that a reality. For instance, I chaired a policy forum for DG Grow and supported by DG Connect, looking at the digital transformation of Europe's industrial base. We did lots of these things. So Paul and I said, look, what shall we concentrate on in our Global Digital Foundation? Let's concentrate on the bumps in the road that stop the realization of these benefits. Of course, I say to him now, Paul, did we have to pick big bumps on the road? But we seem to be concentrating on some of the tough things. For instance, recently we talked about operationalizing AI governance. That's a big thread of our work. And we looked at hate speech online. And of course, this topic of improving cybersecurity is critical, because without that, we won't get the benefits. We won't realize the benefits of digital technology. Now, although over the years, I've learned a lot about cybersecurity. I've spoken at events. I've hosted events in Munich at the Cybersecurity conference. I've done lots of things, but actually I've learnt more about cybersecurity in my roles on the receiving end of it, as it were. So I chaired the audit committee at a British university, and we suffered a cyber attack. And I learned a lot about the realities, the practicalities of what you do. And only this week, I had a board meeting of a small museum in Bath, the city I live. In fact, it's the Museum of East Asian Art. And if anybody's in the city of Bath, please do go and visit. It's a little gem. But we had a board meeting on Monday, and one of the directors said to me, what are we doing about cybersecurity? And this is a small organization that employs maybe 10 people, but nevertheless, it's right up there on our board agenda. So, you know, although I know it, as it were, from the digital and theoretical perspective, I've actually learned a lot that complements that from actually being involved in some of the realities and how it affects organizations. And when we get to talk more, I can perhaps share some of those experiences as well.
No, definitely, 100%. And then finally to Milda.
Thank you very much. So I think you raised a very important point, and I think this is the core of human nature, that you learn from your own mistakes. You don't learn from other people's mistakes. And I think this also applies to SMEs, because a lot of SMEs in Europe live with an idea that it will never happen to me. That the main targets are big corporations, critical service providers, but not a small bakery or a small shop in a village, right? But that's not the case. And I think also my question is like, I wonder how many SMEs will read this guide. I did read. I wonder how many of you read this guide in this event here. Because the problem is that SMEs will always kind of struggle to understand that they need to have enough cybersecurity resilience and capacities to fight these cyber attacks. And I think this is one of the things, core things that we try to address at European Cybersecurity Organization that we represent. Of course, we work mainly with SMEs, the providers of cybersecurity solutions, because it's important to have enough cyber capacities in Europe to address all the cyber threats and to have a strong industrial basis. But we also have dedicated work on the skills, because also it's important to have enough cybersecurity professionals on the market who can actually help these SMEs to address cybersecurity challenges and to kind of to educate them. So I think this is a kind of short introduction from my side, but happy to discuss more in the upcoming debate.
Definitely. And just to say about the guide, everyone, you do have them on your chairs, and I don't see many questions yet. So while you're reading, while you're listening, while you're thinking, put all of those questions into Slido. Okay, well, Milda, just picking up then on what you just talked about, you were saying about people only really act when they sort of learn from their mistakes, and you talked about the struggle for SMEs, and then also you questioned whether or not they had read or perhaps would want to read this Q&A and what kind of information they could potentially get from it. So given your sort of opening gambit then, what's your sort of analysis of this Q&A guide? Is it helpful?
It's absolutely helpful, and it's well written, and I think it provides a lot of resources and tips how actually where this SME and small business, where they should start, how they should start building their response plan, maybe what kind of legislation they should look at in the first place. So there's a lot of kind of guidance in this document, but of course the problem is that, you know, these small businesses in like remote areas in Europe, you know, or not necessarily also in the cities, they don't take enough attention to address this issue. And I think that's the most important point. I think there should be, we can produce a lot of guidelines and guides for the SMEs, but there should be this mentality flip. The companies should understand that everyone is a target nowadays, and with increased digitalization, it doesn't matter the type of your business, the size of a business, you are the target, because through you, the malicious actors can reach other organizations, right? So everything is connected. So you should not rule out yourself as a potential target. So I think it's very important to have this mentality switch, but how to achieve it, That's a challenging question. I'm afraid I don't have the concrete answer to that.
I don't think anyone does. I mean, I think it really is. I mean, you're right about it being an attitude switch that's needed because, I mean, from my perspective, perhaps, John, you can answer this next one. It seems as if Europe is sometimes a little bit sleeping when it comes to this idea of digitalization and embracing technology. We know, obviously, you know, you can throw all kinds of, you know, negative comments about the EU, over-regulated, red tape, all that kind of stuff, but they seem a little bit risk adverse. Even when, for example, you have things like the AI Act, they're not, it seems as if they're trying to always balance a little bit, you know, innovation against their sort of wariness against innovation in a way. So it's always like two competing aims. So is it that there's a kind of malaise in Europe, if you see what I mean, that they don't quite seem to embrace everything fully, and that's why perhaps they don't understand the risk, the SMEs don't really understand the risk, or that's not communicated fully to them?
I actually wouldn't have said so. I think if you run a business, you're of any sort, whether it's a public service or you're always looking at how do I achieve my objectives, how do I maximize my opportunities and minimize my risks, at least if you're a good manager, you are. And maybe I could just answer that by saying what I intend to do with this guide at the museum, given that we only talked about it at the board meeting. So I'm going to say to the manager, the woman who runs the museum, read through the guide, and then I'm going to talk it through with her. There'll be two aspects of it. One is, just as part of your job of maintaining, looking after the assets and the resources of the organisation, it doesn't matter whether it's a piece of jade or anything else, this is part of that. You've just got to think of this as how you manage and protect your assets, okay? So I'm going to ask her to go through it, and then we're going to divide this into two things. One is the things she should just check with our IT service provider. And I think a lot of small companies now do rely on an IT service provider, particularly the micro end. You know, the move towards cloud computing. It's what you do. So, so we check with your IT service provider that they're covering all the bases, and ask them some sort of smart questions, which you can get from the guide. And then the other thing, which was covered in that little video, is what are the things that you need to tell the staff? And it's not a matter of scaring the staff or spooking them or even giving them yet more difficult things to deal with. Just give them a few simple things, many of which were covered in the guide. So just think of it as managing any other business risk. That's certainly what we did at the University Audit Committee. As far as I was concerned, it was just another business risk. And it's a difficult one and you need specialists. But then we had other business risks like the handling of human tissue in the research labs. You know, that's a fairly specialist topic as well. So turn to the specialist. And just before I leave that turn to the specialist, the advice about going to your CCERT, or we found GCHQs, the UK Security Service, incredibly helpful. You know, it's like pick the phone, oh, here's a list of organisations you can go to, get these experts. I mean, very helpful. So turn to the experts, like Eva's organisation.
Provide information. That's quite
absolutely.
I don't think that's something that SMEs, for example, in the UK would be.
They've produced guides like this in the past, even. So yeah, they're really on it, and they're very aware that if they don't, I mean, it's true for all of us. That's why we're doing this. If we don't protect the SME community, as it says in the guide, as it says in the video, then the rest of the economy. Let me just one other point on that, because supply chain comes up in this quite a lot. If you look at the way the defence industry looks at its supply chains, it thinks about that in terms of its management of risk. And it thinks about how can I help the small businesses that supply me. And I think we need to encourage that attitude more in other sectors. I think it's good in some, you know, in automotive, because if you're, or aerospace, you know, if your supply chain fails, you're stuck. You're really stuck. And if they are attacked, you are attacked. So we've got to get that message to big business as well. It's not just about looking after your cybersecurity. Look after your smaller suppliers and recognise they may not have the capabilities that you have.
Okay. Well, Eva, you of course worked on developing this SME Q&A cybersecurity guide as well. John was talking there about encouragement. Essentially, you are providing a personal sort of hand-holding service to that specific museum. But does the guide in itself, do that? Because you're not always going to have someone like John to help yourself out. So if you just read this guide, is that enough to sort of motivate you? And if I may also, in the research into putting this guide together, what were the most surprising things that you found when it came to SMEs?
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. So this is also what I'm doing. John is evangelist. I go and I actually support SMEs to implement cybersecurity for themselves. And all this knowledge we try to put in the guide so that it's a go-to place, a Q&A. The first questions you would receive, probably John received, we try to address as well in the guide. So it's the starting point in the cybersecurity journey. But what was the most surprising thing you asked when I did the research? It's really how important SMEs are. 50% of the EU GDP. We know 50%, the other 50% is government. So it's basically government and SMEs that drive the economy, that allows us to be able to purchase food and put on the table, to build a house, to live our lives, and how little we have supported them, the SMEs, to improve their cybersecurity, knowing that 50% of them would go out of business if they are suffering a major cyber attack. This means we're just betting. It's a bet. It's a casino game. Would they, 50%, basically 25% of our GDP disappear because of cyber attack or not? And we haven't done enough to support this bet yet. And on the other hand, I recognize the challenge it is. I work myself with SMEs. I work with large companies. But they're usually those aware, and they come to me. They come to me and they say, Eva, we saw you here or there registered, and we like to increase our cybersecurity. How do we do that? I help them. But how do you reach all the other millions of companies in Europe? How do you reach them to trigger this curiosity, to trigger this need, awareness for them to improve cybersecurity? This, I think, comes out in every discussion we have about cybersecurity of SMEs. And this is, again, what I think the Q&A would have also the biggest added value by being translated in what Tony just announced today, that they would also put it, Huawei would put it in the network of all our major member states so that it could easily be transmittable to SMEs. EIT Digital, I don't even speak about, I'm an SME myself in cybersecurity, so thank you, Miud, also for the work you do for us. I face this issue. We're two-people company. We need to grow, and we want to sell our services. How do we find the resources? How do we find the knowledge as well, if I'm not in security, obviously, to also invest in sustainably growing my business with security?
What sort of security do you have then for a two-person team?
It's pretty much we rely on suppliers. We rely on the infrastructure, on the cloud security. Obviously I'm in the sector, so I know how to manage the data. It's about data security. But multi-factor authentication, everything I put in the guide, it's everything that I do for my company, again, because I experience it firsthand and I know that this is manageable. It's also very nice to say, you should adopt AI tools. They're there on the market, it's available. But I know it won't happen because it requires money, it requires research, and eventually it's a lot of infrastructure behind for SME to be able to take advantage of this technology. So simple tools, simple awareness measures, simple, we rely obviously a lot on suppliers, on the IoT solution security, on the data security in the cloud services, on all of this.
And Matteo, then, would you like to sort of elaborate on your aspect? You were talking about education, and education being key.
Yeah, indeed. We believe that, first of all, we know that we have a very big shortage of people expert in many digital topics, including especially cybersecurity. So this is what, as EIT Digital, we are really trying. Of course, EIT Digital is not enough, but we are really trying to close this gap in skills, in digital skills in general, and specifically in cybersecurity. And we believe that the gap is existing at a different level. First of all, we need more people in general who are experts and technical experts in cybersecurity. And this is what, for instance, what we are trying to do in our EIT Digital Master School. Really breeding talent from the young age who are expert in a specific technology domain, cybersecurity. We have a master in cybersecurity with 7 universities, 7 European universities, who is allowing students to study in 2 of these universities, so in different countries, for instance, Romania, Italy, France, Finland. And on top of that, we are not only giving them, the technical knowledge, but we are also giving them a minor in innovation and entrepreneurship. Because we really believe that besides the technical knowledge, to be leader and to be involved in an SME, but also in a larger corporate, or even to start your own startup, you really need to also have skills and knowledge in innovation, entrepreneurship, and how to manage your own business. And this is what we are trying to do at, let's say, for talent at a younger age. So to give them a specific master program with a pan-European, let's say, experience to really provide them the skills to be leader in cybersecurity. On top of that, we are also trying to, let's say, target people that are already in the market. So for instance, we have short-term courses, for example, in terms of summer schools. In this case, we are targeting young professionals. And we are, again, we are always trying to have a combination of technical skills in cybersecurity with more soft skills, what we can call soft skills, or management skills, entrepreneurship skills throughout our program. For example, next year we will have a cybersecurity summer school in Greece. Also, what we are trying to do, always to attract more people, is also to have these programs in an attractive location. So, for example, this one will be in Greece.
But is it hard to get older generations to get involved with the learning aspect when it comes to understanding what the risk is, perhaps to the SME that they are working for? And perhaps in which sectors are we seeing the most risks to SMEs?
Yeah, I have to say that is hard because indeed the third target that target persons that we are at the EIT Digital are indeed professionals. Through our professional schools, we are targeting professionals, and also we see that depending on the sector, we have to target a different level of professional. So for instance, in artificial intelligence, in data management, we can target people that are more experienced already, but they have to boost their skills. But really, for example, in cybersecurity, we really see that we have to target, let's say, a general audience, a general public, people without a degree in computer science, without a knowledge in ICT, really to get the knowledge and to grasp what is needed, again, as we are doing in this guide, from the basic to really understand the problem and try themselves to implement some measures to, let's say, fight against cyber attacks and become more knowledgeable of cybersecurity.
And which one of you would like to actually take the question on the people problem then? Because, I mean, yes, it was a little bit ageist to say perhaps the older generations don't necessarily, understand or want to adapt to understanding what cybersecurity is. But how much of a problem is it? Perhaps, Milda, you could take the question then. How much of a problem is it for SMEs when it comes to their staff and understanding what the risk is? How difficult is it? Is it just simply they turn up to the office and they open an email? I mean, it can happen so easily, can't it?
I mean, of course, I think there's a lot of discussions about this, the need for cyber hygiene and the need for proper cybersecurity skills. So, of course, so this is also what we do at EXO. We recognize the need to address different age groups and even different gender groups. As you might have heard, there is this Women for Cyber Foundation. So this was an initiative that originated at EXO, but now it's a completely separate, very successful initiative with which we try to address the gender gap in cybersecurity. So to bringing more professionals, female professionals to the field of cybersecurity, and it's going well, and also bringing more female cybersecurity professionals on the panels, because sometimes we see that there's always a lack of it. So,
well, there are two here today. Thank you very much.
It's not the case. It's not the case today, but as you can see in many,
we're in the majority today. It's okay. Sorry, gentlemen.
Exactly. So also I also suggest to you to check out. There's even like the book we released of like hacking gender gaps. So even whenever you have a question, what kind of female professional you would like to invite to your panel, you have basically a depository of professionals. You just can kind of open the page and find the expert you need for your panel. So, but also we have this Youth for Cyber initiative where we had different education learning modules for different age groups, starting with the primary school, high school students, let's see, the teenagers and the early adults, like the university, first year university students. So there's different modules where people can learn the basics of cybersecurity. So it also kind of increased the awareness, what kind of links not to click and so on, but also encourage people to join the cybersecurity. So we try to address this gender gap. But I also kind of, if
Absolutely,
I may,
go ahead, yeah.
I would like to kind of come back to what Eva mentioned, like how to reach the SMEs, right? Because I think we develop a lot of policies and interesting stuff here in Brussels, and it's all nice, but all the SMEs are actually, all throughout Europe. And at Axel, we promote the multi-level governance. So we see that the regions are very important in developing a strong cybersecurity policy in Europe, because regions have the proximity to the local ecosystems, to the SMEs, be they the users of cybersecurity or providers of cybersecurity solutions. That's why we have even like a dedicated working group to work with the regions. We work on different projects, and also now we coordinate the network of this so-called European Digital Innovation Hubs. So these are the regions who are approved by the European Commission to advance and develop digitalization in the regional ecosystems. And this is where the real impact can happen, and we can actually address these issues of making SMEs more aware of what kind of cybersecurity measures they should take.
Now, there was one thing I want to touch upon. Our MEP also spoke about it. She brought up the Ukraine war. I think it's perhaps a little bit or quite obvious to say we can perhaps understand why European SMEs have been targeted. But also we saw phishing attacks, as I said in the introduction, increase during the COVID pandemic. So why, John, if I could perhaps come to you, why was this increase during the beginning of the pandemic? And then obviously, I guess, as I said, it is perhaps quite obvious why SMEs are perhaps more have a target on their backs because of the war in Ukraine.
Well, I think in the beginning of the pandemic, it was pretty obviously because everyone was online. So how are you going to get to people other than online? But I think it's also, when we look at this problem, we really need to sort of segment it, as it were. So the issues that we've got that arise from, say, hostile state cyber attacks, we really don't want to worry SMEs about that, frankly. The owner of the SME... I mean,
that's always the big thing the big sort of ticket item that you see flashing.
Of course it is. Yeah. But, I mean, I think it's good to make it real just by, I'll go back to the board meeting on Monday. We've got one board member who reads The Economist, he reads the Financial Times, he comes into the board and he's terrified about what's going to happen. And disproportionately, to my mind, it's not the highest thing on our risk register. So we certainly do need to take steps with the business owners and managers, and I think a way to get at those that's often underestimated are their audit and accounting firms, because this is about risk management of resources, just like anything. So if you want to get to SME owners, a good channel is through their accounting and audit firms. But then when it comes to what do you tell your staff, don't frighten them. Use some of the things in the guide, as Eva would say, I'm sure, just get the basics right. If they can do the basics, the cyber hygiene, and a little bit more, they don't really need to know what's under the covers any more than if they're the van driver, they need to know how the van works. They don't. So, break the thing down. I think at the bigger level of have we got enough people coming into the industry, into the providers? Absolutely not. We need to encourage smart people. But just as we do generally into the digital sector to provide digital services, whether that's systems analysis or programming or development of algorithms. But let's not just scare everyone by saying it's doom and gloom, because we just need to equip the business owners with the ability to manage the business, which the guide does, and also give them tools to help bring their staff up to speed. And it's our job, I suppose, it's our job to make sure that that stuff behind the scenes works, and so they can worry more about where they're going to win more business from rather than who's going to steal my data, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And Eva, what would be your, just building upon then what John just said there, what would be the three sort of main takeaways, you could say, for especially a very small SME, if they're going to read this guide? What's the sort of three main things they should definitely be looking at?
So what John said is very correct. From security perspective, we work with risk management because there's no 100% security, and we have it in the physical world. There's no reason to expect it in the digital world. But what we need to know is what is important to us, and this is one of the recommendations answers in the Q&A. Identify what are your important processes, what are your important assets. Focus your energy and efforts in protecting them. This is the first, identify. The second point is take protection measures. It could be very easy protection measures, and in the future you could think of more advanced capabilities. But this would not only help protect your business, it would allow you to take ownership of your business. Again, it's not left on the cyber criminals to decide how you would sell and how long you would live. No, it's on you to decide. And this is the way to take, again, control of your business by implementing security for it. And last but not least, we have to understand that cyber attacks happen every day. And it could happen to you. It happens to me.
Did it happen to him?
We were subject, probably many of you would recognize in my team, CEO fraud. Someone sends a message to my employee with a nice photo from LinkedIn of my partner, because they're not so often in contact. Oh, I urgently need this voucher. Send it over because I'm at the conference and it's important client, so we need to go ahead and do this. We are all subject to cyber attack. How serious, how critical they are, and how much we would lose.
Just quickly, what would your advice be then to somebody who gets an email with the face of their boss on, and that person thinks, oh, she finally wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, which obviously I'm sure you do. But what would be your advice then? Or someone gets a text message saying you've just won, I don't know, a fund for some money, or how would you like to be a part of a government scheme, or X, Y, Z. I mean, there's so many examples of it. People contacting you either on social media or messaging you. How would you do it? How would you stop them from doing it? Do you just say, look, if you don't understand the text message, or if it's come from a weird number or something like that, you just don't respond? Is that
exactly? So this is a very relevant question, actually, that we also received in the writing of the Q&A. And we answer step by step. So you have to first see, is it something solicited or not? So the world is sometimes very generous, but rarely you receive nice or critical news over digital communication. So is that something that you expect? Did you contact this organization and you expect return from them? This is usually the first clue. Okay, it's not something I expect, so I have to dig further. Who is the sender? Is it legitimate, actually? Because most of the cases, it's just a photo. They don't even claim my husband's identity. So it's upon you to see, okay, what is there behind? Who is really the sender? Is it even the right number, the right email, end, of the organization? See if there's urgency. So we all live in a world where we're very quick and we work and we move forward. But this is also a way to trap people.
Be mindful.
Be mindful. So if there's this big urgency, so don't fall immediately into reactive mode. Think, okay, it's an urgency to the sender, but who is the sender? What do they really want from me? Why should it be emergency for me? And last but not least, how does it look like? Because still very often the messages, the phishing attacks are not that professional. So you might spot a typing error, you might spot some weird way of writing something instead of, oh, it's a 0, for instance. Those are typical errors that you would spot, even very sophisticated phishing or
Put on your spidey sense, everyone.
Exactly,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm going to quickly go to some questions because we are almost
I would like
running
to just
out
to,
of...
to
Oh, sorry,
finish
yes.
by saying that it's a process, right? We have spent thousands of years as a society to learn how to protect individual protection in the physical world for ourselves. Then we had the governments, we had, you know, the police, the law enforcement that help us protect, but also spreads the laws and the rules so that we are aware what are the low-hanging fruits. We now start with cybersecurity. Let's be serious about it. Let's try to catch up as soon as possible and to share as well so that we can help each other. If you see someone robbed on the street, would you run after the thief? Or would you call the police? You would. So do the same in digital space. If you see something happening, react, contact the authorities, provide support to your peer. Even just saying, oh, I'm really sorry for what happened to you. You know, how can I help you? This would already
keep
be
learning from all
very
the bad
useful.
experience as well. Milda, I'll go for you. Come to you for this question. They ask, could you comment on cloud security and how cloud computing could help SMEs? And this is from Detlef.
Right. Well, cloud security, I think, can help SMEs, but also it kind of opens the threat perimeter, right? So I think it's kind of pros and cons. So you have to know how to handle that, right? So because it's very useful to store your data, the very important information. But of course, it opens this like the threat perimeter. So and then you need to have a proper security measures in place. So it's pros and cons at the same time. So I think that will be kind of a short comment, short answer.
That's perfect because we only have a few minutes. Matej, I'll come to you for the last question then. Is this guide planned to be enriched with additional questions in the future, reporting incidents and choosing the right tools to prevent a business return on security investment would be interesting to address?
Yes, definitely. As Tony was also saying in his introduction, this guide is a first step. So now this is a guide with Huawei, EIT Digital, and Global Digital Foundation. But what we want to do is to get different stakeholders on board, try to understand their needs, not only at a European level, but also at a national and regional level. Because again, as we were saying, what we need to, how to reach the SME, one of the best way is to go into the local and regional ecosystem, because this is where the SMEs are used to play and where they feel confident and where they go to ask questions. So again, this is a first step, but what we are trying to do and what we will do in the future is to try to improve this guide and also involve different perspectives and different stakeholders.
Indeed. Okay, well, since you were talking, I'll ask you for your final comments then, or key takeaway, or whatever it is, the wisdom that you want to impart to the audience before we leave.
Well, in my case, focusing on, let's say, on a different perspective from some of the other panelists, I really believe that on top of, indeed, we have this guide, and this is a very first step for people to understand what is needed and the basics that they need for cybersecurity. But again, they also have to look around, and at European level and also at the national level, there are several programs for helping SMEs in cybersecurity. So again, look around and try to find the programs and the services that really can support you. And many of these can also be for free. So actually it's not even that there is a payment behind. So look around and go and seek for these services and education programs that can help you.
Thank you. Next to Mrs. Claus, Eva.
So very important is to stay aware, so try to learn for yourself, but also give your knowledge. This is what I do. So I do cybersecurity for living, right? But I come here and I share the knowledge for free. Why I do it? Because we all need to be more secure eventually, and it's a big task. We can only do it if we work together. Share your knowledge, help others around you, and this would improve also your security in return.
Thank you so much, John.
I should declare an interest. I chair a company that provides cloud computing services. Well, actually, does quite specialist.
So the question should have come to you, yeah.
But it's quite specialist, sort of open source cloud. But putting that aside, you know, any business I was involved in, I would say definitely explore external provision of some sort or another. I mean, it's like, don't keep your money under the mattress. Use a trusted bank, and the same thing. You know, give the problem to someone else. You trust someone else with your data that's got a brilliant reputation for doing it. And you know, I'm not promoting, I don't know, AWS or something like that, but clearly these people are looking after data for loads of people. So you think about a cloud service provider that's suitable for you. I think as a business risk, that would definitely be on my list of things to do.
And then Milda?
Well, I think as the last one in the row, I just can say that I agree with with everything that the fellow speakers said. I think, yeah, it's just important that indeed, as it was said, the company should be proactive and look for different solutions, because even like the big cybersecurity companies, providers, they give a lot of valuable information and resources for free. So you can already like educate yourself, learn about the basics cybersecurity needs and how you can incorporate and adjust these things. And of course, I think what I can mention also, and if you need any advice or anything, yeah, don't be a stranger. Get in touch with us, with the EXO, European Cybersecurity Organization, and as well with the other panelists and the organizations. Because there's a lot of things around that is up online, just you need to take a good use of it.
Thank you so much. And I thank you so much, all of the panelists. I think for anyone watching, there's been a lot of information on cybersecurity for SMEs, and don't forget to read this Q&A guide. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and bye-bye.